UFC 308 going down this Saturday in Abu Dhabi. We have Ilia Topuria defending his belt against Max Holloway for the main event. It's going to be a great main event. It's probably one of my favorite fights that was announced this year. Probably one of my favorite title fights of this year. Um, Great fighters in the main event, and this card is really good pay-per-view card that we have going on this Saturday in Abu Dhabi. I'm very excited for it, and I can't wait to break it down for you guys. This is my second time breaking this card down. I recorded this earlier with my co-host Drew. If you guys have been watching the episodes, you guys know Drew, the man behind the camera. But I had some technical difficulties that didn't record the audio, so I'm re-recording the breakdown for UFC 308. Just doing it by myself. I'm not going to have Drew come back out here and re-record what we just did. So I'm gonna do this solo, and hopefully we can make it up to you guys on the next breakdown. And I'll make sure to check all the settings and make sure everything's right before I start recording. So that's my fault that Drew's not here. Having to re-record this episode and breakdown for you guys. I just had to re-record it tonight, right after we just broke it down for about an hour and a half. I thought this is a very important card to break down. There's a lot of meaningful fights on this card, and I have to just get right into it. So hopefully, if you're listening to this on Spotify, you can follow the podcast. And if you're watching this on YouTube, hopefully I do enough to earn your sub. But you guys already know how I do it. I start from the prelims and work our way up to the top of the main event. So let's jump right into it right now. We got let's see. First final card. We have someone stepping in on short notice. We have Carlos Leal stepping in on short notice for this fight. He's taking on Renat Fakardinov. Fakardinov was supposed to fight Rizaboev, I believe. Sorry to get that out of the way. So yeah, he was supposed to fight Rizaboev, and that was a great fight. I was taking Rizaboev in that fight. But for Renat, his bread and butter is the wrestling. He's going to do whatever it takes to get this fight to the ground. That's where he does his best work, is the wrestling, and pressuring forward, and getting the wrestling, getting the takedowns. But for Leal, from the tape studied and the fights that I've watched, Carlos Leal, you see the record 21-5. He already has a lengthy MMA resume. He's done some work in the PFL, LFA, stuff like that. He is a very good striker. When he kind of gets in that green zone, that boxing up close zone of striking, he has power to knock you out. He does have some ground game too, but I don't know if he can handle the wrestling, chain wrestling, just the relentlessness of Renat Fakardinov's wrestling here. But I feel like Leal might be the toughest test that Renat Fakardinov has seen in the UFC so far. This is Carlos Leal's UFC debut this Saturday, and I know this is kind of like a big step up and a big step in to replace on a short notice and going to Abu Dhabi. I know those factors they could play a part, but it's not like Carlos Leal was coming off the couch. He was scheduled to fight soon, I believe, or like next week. So he has been training. But it's not for this opponent anymore. He has a new opponent, so he's not just rolling off the couch, taking this fight on short notice, and hoping for a Hail Mary, type of performance. So I think Renat's going to have a good, strong first round, a good, strong second half of the round. In the second round, but what does the fight look like end of the second round and end in the third round? That's where things kind of get interesting for this fight. And I think Carlos Leal is going to, have Renat Fakardinov kind of facing some adversity late in this fight. And I'm going to take a shot on the underdog here. Lines are not out yet, but I would assume that Renat's going to end up as a favorite with Carlos coming in on short notice. So I'm going to take Leal as the short notice underdog and the UFC debut. I don't feel comfortable about it, but I think he has a skill set to kind of make this fight interesting. And yeah, maybe he gets a finish like in the third round. So give me Carlos Leal to upset Renat Fakardinov in the first fight here. Next fight we have Ishmael Naradiev versus Bruno Silva. And when I saw Ishmael as a favorite, I kind of had to dig into his MMA career, look at the who's he fighting, stuff like that. And I knew he looked familiar because he was in the UFC about 4 years ago. So he had already had a UFC run, his first stint in the UFC, and it wasn't that great. He was probably like 2-2 in the UFC, and then he got cut, did his thing on the regional scene, and now the UFC is bringing him back. And when he got cut and went to the regional scene, it's not like he was finishing these people. He kind of was okay on the regional scene, but nothing to like, oh, we have to get this guy back in the UFC type stuff. So I'm kind of surprised that the UFC is bringing back Ishmael, and they're bringing him back against a good vet and Bruno Silva. Before I get to Bruno Silva, Ishmael is very, very active, great kicks, very active with the kicks, but he does follow up with punches after the kick. So it's almost like a jab and following up with like a kick, but just the other way around, kick and then jab. So he's not throwing naked kicks out there, following stuff up with kicks. Um, he does have some submission finishes, but I don't know if he's wanting to go to the ground. I don't think he's comfortable there. He is submitting lower level talent in the original scene. And then his last win by knockout, um, the person that he knocked out, I had to look at their MMA career as well. And that person is 0-2 in their MMA career. And those two losses are knockouts. So I don't know if I put much stock into his last finish, and that's Ishmael Naridev here. I don't know if I put much stock into his last finish. Um, so that's the thing I kind of realized watching Ishmael's fights here. He doesn't have scary power. He doesn't have this sort of like something that stands out to me to where I'm like, ooh, maybe I better fade Bruno Silva here. I think if this fight's on the feet, if this fight is a kickboxing type fight for 15 minutes, I think Bruno Silva has a great chance of winning this fight. Bruno Silva, again, a great kickboxer. Um, he is kind of there to be countered a bit when he's on his A game. Um, I think he can hang in there with Ishmael. And like, yeah, Bruno Silva has had a really up and down run in the UFC. I feel like the UFC hasn't done him really much any favors with the matchups that he's gotten. He's really faced some heavy wrestlers, grapplers. Yeah, he's been outstruck. Yes, I get it. I get why people wouldn't want to take a chance here with Bruno Silva as an underdog, but I see it as Ishmael isn't proven yet, and Bruno Silva has been there, done that, and he's a vet. And I feel like 35 years old, still learning, learning from his mistakes. Um, I don't think this fight goes to the ground, and that's kind of Silva's weaknesses here. If someone wants to wrestle him and get him to the ground, um, yeah, give me the underdog here. Give me Bruno Silva to make this a very interesting fight here. Again, if this fight is on the feet for 15 minutes, I like Bruno Silva's chances for him to land better shots, um, land the more effective shots. And I think if he can just keep up with the pace of Ishmael and land those shots, those big shots that may sway the judge's decision here, I think he can win a decision here. So, but again, I don't think Ishmael's that good. So I could see a finish for Bruno Silva, but yeah, give me Bruno Silva by decision here. Next fight we have for Farid Basharat versus Victor Hugo. So Victor Hugo is um he's a good fighter. I feel like he does start fast in his fights. So the first round is very very um, fast. He starts fast. I feel like Victor Hugo could die out as the fight goes on, and with someone like Basharat who is so relentless with takedowns, and I think he could strike too. But he's more, him and his brother Javid. I think they're really great wrestlers. I think that wrestling could just be too much in the pace that Basharat fights at. I think it can present some cardio issues even more for Victor Hugo. Give me Farid Basharat to win by decision here. Next fight, we have Kennedy Nunchukwu versus Chris Barnett. Listen, I know people are very, very um, off the train of Kennedy Nunchukwu, and I feel like Kennedy Nunchukwu has um, had performances where we're all like buying into what he's got going on, and we probably expect him to grow from those wins. But the improvements just haven't came through. The improvements just haven't been there for Kennedy and Chukwu, and it's kind of disappointing a little bit. Just when we think he's going to make a leap, a jump in his skill, nothing really changes, and then he loses, and then it looks bad. So we're all just kind of frustrated with his performances as of late, but I feel like there's still something there. And I think with the huge reach advantage and the height advantage in this fight, listen, Chris Barnett is going to have a tough time covering distance and trying to land a Hail Mary shot because that's just how big the differential is with the reach and the height. We got a 5'9" fighter against a 6'5", and then the reach is 85 for Nchukwu and then 75 for Barnett. So he has to cover so much ground just to land something. Hopefully he lands something. And Chris Barnett hasn't fought in 2 years. And listen, the guy is athletic for his build. Like if you look at that body and look at this fighter, you wouldn't think he is capable of doing what he has done. His spinning kick, his spinning roundhouse kick or whatever against John Vellante was probably one of the more shocking knockouts that I've seen in the sport in like the last 5 years. Um, so he's crazy athletic for his build. Just a great attitude. From the walkout to the fight. I mean, this man is just having the time of his life, and we'd love to see a Chris Barnett just on the screen. He makes us smile. He makes us happy. Very infectious energy that Chris Barnett has. Um, but I think this is just a bad fight, man. And for 2 years, I don't know what Chris Barnett has been doing for 2 years. I don't know if he's getting his weight under control, learning more skill. I don't know, but I think Kennedy is still trying to find his groove, and I think just the raw bare bones of his skill is kind of enough to get by Chris Barnett, and that's the way I feel about Kennedy and Nchukwu. I think the straight punches and straight shots from Kennedy is just going to be a problem for Chris Barnett while he's still trying to cover ground and throw something up and trying to hit Kennedy and Nchukwu. So, give me Kennedy and Nchukwu by knockout. Next fight, we have Abus Magomedov versus Bruno Fajeda. This is a tough fight. So Bruno Fajeda has kind of been on a roll at middleweight with knocking his opponents out. This man has been knocking out his opponents within the first round. All of his knockouts have been in the first round. I don't think he has seen a second round yet in the UFC. So he has the power. Now at middleweight, I feel like he's a bit undersized. He doesn't make up for the reach a little bit, but I feel like he's a bit small. I don't know. That's the way I feel. But I don't know. When you look at Bruno Fajeda and who he's knocking out, we have a Phil Haas and a Dustin Stoltzfus, who, yeah, Dustin was known for being durable, but he's getting knocked out a little bit more than usual in his last 5 fights. So his chin may be questionable now, and I think he's just fighting the right fighters for his style. I mean, yeah, he knocked out Gregory Rodriguez, which is impressive to me. But RoboCop still can get caught in firefights, and he got caught and he got laid out. I feel like that is one, right? Yeah, yeah. Okay, that is it. He knocked out Gregory Rodriguez. And then for Boost Magomedov, a great kickboxer. He does a really good job of keeping distance. He uses a lot of front kicks to the body, teep kicks to kind of keep that distance and keep that range. But he's really good at bouncing in and out. Um, as we saw in Magomedov's last fight, he took down Warley Alves 6 times. So we were able to see that Magomedov does have wrestling in that back pocket that I think it was good to see, and I think it could be present a problem for Bruno Fajeda, who I don't think people have really tested that takedown because they're probably scared to get into that distance, get close to Bruno Fajeda because of that knockout power. But I think Abus could mix things up with the strikes and then hopefully find his way in and maybe use that wrestling to kind of slow down Bruno Fajeda and kind of wear on him and uh, make him tired and use that first round to really, yeah, take a hit to the cardio of Bruno Fajeda. And then in rounds 2 and 3, that's when Abus can really get comfortable on the feet. The power is not really there for Bruno Fajeda when he's tired and breathing heavy. I think Abus could kind of take advantage of that. I am looking at like a round 2, round 3 finish for Abus Magomedov because I think Abus just has that a good game plan of keeping distance, just staying out of the way for the big shots, and kind of letting Bruno Fajeda kind of punch himself out, and he's tired in rounds 2 and 3. Um, but I feel more comfortable with Abus Magomedov going decision here. I would look at like maybe over rounds. I don't know what that number is for you guys, but try to look at the over rounds for your sports book. Or if you guys want to get really crazy, look at a round 2, round 3 finish for a Boost Magomedov. Because the reach advantage is there for a Boost Magomedov, 78 inches to Bruno Fajeda 72. So the reach advantage is there. And if Magomedov could manage that range in rounds 2 and 3 and just be a sniper from outside and kind of catch Bruno throwing crazy, he could be look for a finish here. So I'm gonna go Abus Magomedov by decision, but maybe sprinkle something on the TKO side of things. Next fight we have Mateus Rebecki versus uh Metabek Orabai. That's my best pronunciation for that. So Rebecki is going to come out very, very aggressive at the beginning of this fight. That's just kind of how he fights. He starts fast, but I think his downfall is um, the cardio. He can't last for 15 minutes with that pace. I think he outpaces himself. And I think he does that hoping that he puts on such a relentless pace in the first round that he hopefully gets out his opponents early in the fights. Um, but with Oral by, people may think that he just has wrestling, has the grappling on the ground or whatever, but this guy does he can strike. I mean, striking is not the greatest, but he can work his way into distance and give you something to make you wonder striking wise, and then get you down, use the grappling, get you down to the ground, and kind of take over from there. And I think because of that, and I think because of the striking that Orabai has, I think it's enough to kind of entertain Rebecca on the feet a bit, and then Orabai is shooting for takedowns and getting the takedowns successfully. So again, this could be a late finisher because of Rebecca and him kind of fading out later into the fights. Orabai could take over late and get a late finish here, but give me Orabai by submission here. I feel like he does take advantage of Rebecca, uh, the cardio and stuff like that. He does get to the fight to the ground in the round three, and Orabai does lock up a submission because Orabai is one of those guys who will look for a finish. He's just not going to lay and prey on you, and I think he does move into positions that he looks for the finish. So give me a submission win for Orabai. Next fight, we have Geoff Neal versus RDA, Rafael Dos Anjos. 1 second. Just had to get a drink because it's hard talking for this long. And it sucks not having my guy here, my co-host. So I'm here to just kind of talk for this whole breakdown. But let's get into this fight, man. So RDA is still around, and RDA has one of those resumes that are just insane for the UFC and MMA. Like he probably has one of the most impressive resumes in all UFC. He's fought in the who's who in lightweight and welterweight, and still going at it at 39 years old. It's really impressive. Um, it's really crazy to me that if RDA didn't pull out or come down with an injury for that Conor McGregor fight, like where would RDA be at if he did beat Conor McGregor? I know that was prime Conor McGregor, but prime Conor McGregor was still getting taken down, and I think RDA had a good prime RDA still had a good skill set to kind of probably take care of Conor McGregor. I think. Again, it's crazy to say because Conor was still in his prime, but RDA was a bad man. And because of RDA falling out, we had the Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor first fight, and then Nate Diaz submitted Conor McGregor in that first fight, and Nate Diaz, whole career just went to a whole different level, stardom, stuff like that. So what if, it's a crazy what if to think about. But anyways, to this fight. Mm, I hate this fight because it's at 170, and I think RDA has shown that he is struggling at welterweight. He is really a natural 155er, and I would hope that he would hook up with he would get with Jose Aldo's nutritionist or whatever, because Aldo's finding a way to make 135. He's been at featherweight his whole career, and then just a few years ago, he's made that cut to 135. Everyone thought it was impossible, but he's making it work. I would hope that RDA would do the same thing and uh, find his nutritionist and get some help to kind of, keep his weight down. I know it's hard to cut weight when you get into your older ages, especially in this sport. He's about to be 40 years old, so trying to cut weight at 40 is tough to do. But it's still possible, But I hate that RDA is at welterweight. We saw in that Vicente Luque fight that these guys at 175 or 170 are just hard to deal with, and RDA can't be physical with them how he is at lightweight. Um, because RDA is like that. Like he just wants to. He can stand and strike with you, yes, but he does a lot of his best work against the cage, grinding out his opponents, wearing on them with the wrestling, and then eventually getting this fight to the ground. So, and he's having a hard time doing that against these 170 welterweights. I think he's going to have a trouble with Geoff Neal here. Hands of steel. This man has power. Neal has power. I feel like he's kind of being gun shy a little bit with his hands, not really letting his hands go as much as he used to. Sorry. But yeah, Neal's not letting his hands go as much as he used to, I feel like. I don't know why, but I just kind of feel like that. But he still has some good takedown defense. Shafkat Rakhmonov had troubles getting Geoff Neal down to the ground, and he ended up settling for a standing submission. and then Jeff Neal took Shavkat Rakhmonov to the deep ends in that fight. Like he was close to finishing Shavkat Rakhmonov. So Jeff Neal has had these performances where he looks, and then he gets in front of Neil or not Neil Magny, um, Ian Gary, and then just kind of looks like he's trying to figure out this puzzle of Ian Gary and just not throwing his hands or maybe not trusting in his power. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I think this is a good matchup for Jeff Neal here with the 5-inch reach advantage. I think he has the hands and the power to kind of make RDA think twice about coming in and trying to grapple with him because he is still nasty in the clinch. Jeff Neal is, and I think he is, physically strong enough to hold off RDA if RDA is trying to get this grappling going and get this fight to the ground. But give me Jeff Neal to win by yeah, give me Jeff Neal to win by decision here. And for the featured prelim for UFC 308, this fight was originally the first fight on the card, and now with some shuffling around, this fight ends up as the featured prelim for UFC 308. Hopefully, I do enough to earn your sub with this breakdown. If you're listening to this on Spotify, hopefully you follow the podcast. Hit that follow button. I don't know what you do. I think that's the equivalent of subbing on YouTube. For Spotify, you just hit that follow button. But in this fight, we have Ebo Aslan versus Rafael Circuera. Sorry, I don't know. Um, so Aslan is coming off a win against Turkali, Anton Turkali. Um, and he that was his only loss in his career was against Turkali a few years ago. Then he got his revenge back. But in that fight, I realized that Aslan doesn't really move his head. He keeps his head on the set like the center line, so the head movement's not really there. But he does punch hard. This dude has power, strong kicks. In that fight with Turkali, they if Aslan was having to fight adversity. He had to fight through almost losing them. I feel like he was getting touched up. He was getting Turkali was landing some strong shots. Turkali was standing in the pocket with Aslan and trading with him. So he did have to fight through adversity in that last fight. And watching some Raphael C footage, his opponent, this man is very, very, hands low, kind of elusive on the feet a little bit. Very athletic for a 205er though. His striking and everything. But think he does have some submission wins on his resume as well. So it looks like he's a very all around fighter at 205. But I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm just going off the Abo Aslan fighting through adversity in his last fight, and then him being in the UFC, kind of getting his feet are already wet, in this spotlight already. So I think Abo Aslan gets the win here. I think he wins by TKO, and yeah. To open up the pay per view portion of the fight card, we have Shara Bullet versus Armin Petrosian. This is a very, very interesting fight. I had a hard time kind of picking a winner for this fight. I feel like the UFC has done a good job of building up Shara Bullet. I feel like a lot of people were very high on Shara Bullet coming into the UFC because we saw the finishes, we saw the highlights, we saw the finishes on the the highlights of this guy Shara Bullet, but he's not really finishing fighters in the UFC like he was before coming into the UFC. Maybe people are kind of disappointed of what they've seen so far, but Shara Bullet is I think he's a very exciting striker. And I think this is a kind of a good fight, good style matchup fight for him. I feel like he's kind of been given uh, good fights that kind of fit his style a little bit. Who he has been matched up with so far in the UFC career. Um, but Charles Bullet, uses great kicks. He's very active with the kicks. He's probably going to throw a lot more kicks and strikes with his legs than he is with his hands. But I feel like with time, with time, I feel like his wrestling is growing too. I feel like he's developing a good wrestling game as days and time and training camps go by. So I'm not sleeping that he can wrestle, but maybe I mean, he's not going to use it as offense, but maybe just as defense. And if fights go that route, then he's prepared. But with Armin Petrosian, he really impressed me with his performance against Christian Leroy Duncan, CLD. His performance in that fight really impressed me. CLD was very active with the kicks in that fight. Armin was checking the kicks and yeah, really just had his way and kind of outstriking CLD in that fight, which is pretty impressive to me because CLD is very, very talented striker. So I don't know. What worries me though is Shara Bullet just kind of the volume of strikes from Shara Bullet here, and Armin kind of falling behind on the scorecards, and him trying to playing catch up, or him kind of being in the fight, but him just being outstruck and low output because Shara Bullet is just maybe a bit too active. And I think this fight goes to decision. And I think with him in Abu Dhabi, Sharbullah does come away with a split decision win here. I think Arman can win a round. Um, I think Sharbullah maybe just edges out this win. Um, I don't know. I think there's some value for Arman Petrosian in this fight because of the kickboxing stylistic matchup for Arman. But yeah, just because I think this fight goes to the decision here, I think they kind of edge it out to Shah Magomedov because he's kind of on home turf here. So next fight we have Lee Rowan Murphy versus Dan Ige. So Dan Ige is coming off that UFC 303. He stepped in on 5 hours notice and fought against a very, very dangerous Diego Lopez. Dan Ige won that third round off Diego Lopez. And yeah, man, kind of made it interesting in that fight. Diego Lopez didn't have his way, or I feel like people were just thinking that Diego Lopez was going to steamroll Dan Ige, especially on 5 hours notice. But I feel like Dan Ige was just off pure adrenaline and just kind of going with the flow of the fight, and he made it interesting. 29-28, Diego Lopez, but to win a round off someone who was prepared to fight that day. I know it was a different opponent, but very, very impressive, man. And I feel like Danny Gay is kind of slowly getting into a rhythm and finding his groove and maybe putting things together a bit better than he was beforehand. I think he's got a great coach with Eric. I forget the last name, but I feel like Danny Gay is coming together pretty well. For Leon Lerone Murphy though, I kind of didn't like Lerone Murphy. I kind of thought he was just all hype. But, getting ready for this fight card, I kind of just had to refresh my memory with his last performance against Edson Barbosa. And let me tell you what, that performance from Leroy Murphy against Edson Barbosa was very, very impressive. And because what I saw from there, I'm going to go with Murphy here to win this fight. I think this fight can be very, very interesting on the feet. I think it'd be really, really close and competitive. But I think Leroy Murphy is going to, it's just, he's so strong at F featherweight too. Danig is a tough person to get down on the ground, but I think Murphy can get this fight to the ground, and if he does, I think he just kind of maybe outclasses, outstyles, just scores big on the ground against Danny Ige here. I don't know if he gets the finish though, but give me Leroy Murphy by decision here. Again, this fight could be very, very competitive on the feet, but I think Lerone Murphy gets this fight to the ground, and I think he kind of has his way. And I think he just has moments and better moments in this fight that win him the decision. Next fight, we have Magomed Ankalaev versus Alexander Rakic. It's probably one of my favorite fights on this card, actually. A great fight, a very meaningful fight at light heavyweight. Um, Rakic has had a rough career. He's been sidelined by injuries. I feel like for the last 5 something years, I feel like once he gets going in his career, he just gets injured and then he's sidelined for some time, kind of really throwing off the rhythm of Rakic. Because I think Rakic, if he was active, I think he could be a dangerous, maybe fighting for a belt. So, and when we think about his last performance, even though he got finished by Yuri at UFC 300, Alexander Rakic before he got finished was doing Yuri bad. Um, in that first round, Rakic versus Yuri, Rakic was going off on Yuri, and I think that could be that performance could give Magomed Ankalaev some problems. If Rakic is on, if Rakic is healthy, Ankalaev has something dangerous to deal with. So Magomed Ankalaev, a good striker, he has good hands, but I feel like he really does lean on that wrestling. When he does meet a striker who's willing to strike with him on the feet, he resorts to the wrestling. I know Rakic does have a good history with takedown defense, but I think Magomed Ankalaev could just probably hold him against the cage, and kind of maybe wear on Rakic here, and hopefully getting this fight to the ground. I'm personally a Magomed Ankalaev fan. I like Ankalaev. I know he gets a lot of shit. I know people don't really like him on in the MMA community. I get it, and the way he's talking against wanting to fight for a belt, he shouldn't be talking like that. I know he just fought Johnny Walker, but the resume and how he's talking doesn't really add up. He did get his opportunity to fight Jan Blachowicz, and Jan was kind of beating his ass in that fight. I'm not gonna lie. That fight went to a draw. That fight was for the belt, and he had his opportunity, and he couldn't even get the belt. And now he's talking about fighting Alex Pereira, stuff like that. He wants his opportunity to fight for the belt again. But I don't think Magomed Ankalaev is ready. Now, if he can go out there and finish a Rakic, now let's start talking. But he has to come out and impress with this performance at UFC 308. If he has an okay performance and goes to a decision and wins by decision, the talks about fighting Alex Pereira is not going to be there anymore. So he has to go out there and perform and back up all this talk that he's been talking about the champ and wanting that title fight. Magomed Ankalaev has to go out there and perform and put on an exciting fight and performance. But with Alexander Rakic, it's going to be hard to do, man. Very technical striker. Jan Blachowicz did kick the hell out of Ankalaev's legs. He beat up the legs early. I think Rakic could, if he does the same thing of attacking the legs, the calves of Ankalaev, it's going to be a very, very interesting fight. But I'm going to take Ankalaev. I'm going to take Ankalaev, and I'm going to take Ankalaev by decision here. Just what I'm feeling. Just what I'm feeling. Next up, we have the co-main event. We have Robert Whitaker against Hamzat Chimaev. Is looking good. Chimaev is looking good. He's looking he's looking like he's in a good mood. Um, he looks healthy. The weight cut looks like it's been going okay for Chimaev. He was having some medical issues, being sick. I mean, this fight was supposed to happen in June, I feel like it was, but Robert Whitaker fought Aliskerov and knocked out Aliskerov in his last fight in round one. But that was supposed to be Chimaev and Whitaker headlining that Abu Dhabi card. I feel like it was in Abu Dhabi. I feel like. Anyways, um, we know what Chimaev's going to do, right? Like he's going to come out there, he's going to blitz heavy, he's going to wrestle the hell out of Whitaker. Yeah, the man has striking. I mean, he has some good straight punches. Um, good kicks, yeah, but when it gets to this fighting game and into the octagon, Chimaev will wrestle you, and he's really good at it. He's really, really great at it. Um, but Robert Whitaker, um, probably one of the more impressive resumes at middleweight. He's been around for a minute now. Former champion. I feel like Chimaev hasn't really seen this kind of opponent before. This is going to be the toughest test for Chimaev. Yeah, Chimaev is coming off beating a Kamaru Usman. Usman is a welterweight, moved up to middleweight to fight Chimaev. Come on, man, that's not even. And if that fight was if that fight had two more rounds to it, then Usman probably wins rounds 4 and 5 because Chimaev was gassing out in round 3. And I think this is kind of like Chimaev's downfall for this fight because this fight is 5 rounds. It's not 3 rounds. It's a 5 round co-main event, and Whitaker has been in 6 fights in his career where he went 5 rounds. This man's been here before. He's fought those championship rounds before against some good level competition. Yoel Romero twice, Izzy Adesanya. Whitaker's good, man, and I think he has the striking to kind of keep up uh, with Chimaev, but I don't know what the takedown defense looks like for a Rob. I feel like he hasn't really fought a wrestler like Chimaev before, but it's the durability. It's the I've been here, I've done this before with the 25-minute fight. Chimaev has not seen. I mean, he's seen a third round, maybe what twice, maybe, and he's gassed in the third rounds in both of those fights against Burns and Usman. I'm taking the underdog here. I'm taking the shot on the underdog Robert Whitaker here to win rounds 3, 4, and 5 because I think this fight maybe goes the distance. But don't be surprised if Robert Whitaker does finish Chimaev here. Knockout most likely, but Chimaev's gonna have to finish this fight early. And if he doesn't, he's in for a rude awakening, trying to pace himself and fight for 25 minutes against Robert Whitaker. So give me the underdog. Give me Robert Whitaker to win by TKO. And in the main event, we have Ilia Topuria defending his 145 belt against Max Blessed Holloway. Max Blessed Holloway is probably one of the greatest featherweights of all time. He's up there with uh, Jose Aldo, Alexander Volkanovski, Max Holloway. Hell, you can probably put Connor up there, even though he hasn't defended his belt or any belts. Um, Max is impressive. The durability of Max's chin has held up for this many years. He hasn't been knocked out ever in his career. Um, the best boxer talk. It is what it is. I understand it, but people think because he's coming off that spectacular knockout over Justin Gaethje at UFC 300, probably one of the biggest moments of the year. But probably the biggest moment of UFC 300 was Max Holloway getting uh, that buzzer knockout against Justin Gaethje. But because of that, people think that Max Holloway is a knockout artist or he has that power to knock out his opponents. Listen, he knocked out a Justin Gaethje who, again, has been knocked out before. got caught in a firefight. He was getting his ass whooped for that whole fight, basically. So the accumulation of hits adding up to that final punch that landed perfectly on the chin. I'm putting it more to precision for the chin and where that punch landed to the than more than the power. It was less of the power and more of the precision and where that punch landed for Max. That I think Max knocked out Korean Zombie again, someone who's retiring, but Korean Zombie was fighting reckless, looking for a brawl, and leaves his chin wide and exposed up in the air. And yeah, he gets caught by Max Holloway, and Max knocks him out. So people think that Max Holloway is just this knockout artist. It's not like that. It's more of Max Holloway is going to beat you with volume and basically just like 1,000 cuts, 1,000 punches, and it may be wear on you, but it's worked on guys who have a ton of miles on them, and someone who's about to retire, and then Justin Gaethje who was getting his ass beat for 25 minutes by Holloway, and then that precision of the punch at the end of that fight landing knocked out Justin Gaethje. So he doesn't have the scary power, I don't think. Okay, but he still has great hands, and he still can put out a crazy volume of punches. But when we speak about the champ, Ilia's a bad dude, man. The boxing, the hands, but before people knew him for the boxing and whatever, this man has more submission wins than knockouts. I mean, this man has more. He's known for his grappling. He's known for the ground game and the wrestling and the grappling. But now he's just getting more known since he's been in the UFC for like the past 3 years. He's getting more known for his boxing and his hands. But don't forget, he still can get nasty on the ground with the grappling. So in this fight, Ilia Topuria is coming off beating the champ, the former champ, Alexander Volkanovski. He knocked out Volkanovski in the second round. And what kind of worries me with Ilia Topuria a bit in this fight is just the output, because in that fight with Volkanovski did beat Topuria in that first round. But Topuria was really just, waiting for things to open up. He wasn't really throwing much, but I think he was just seeing how Volkanovski would react to certain feints, or if he would do something, just see how Volkanovski would react to it. And then he pushed forward, kind of trapped Volkanovski against the cage, and then he threw the combo that landed and knocked out Volkanovski. Ilia Topuria cannot do that with Max, because Max, he still has a durable chin, yes, and it hasn't shown that it's gone. The chin is still there for Max, but Max is going to throw so much volume out there, and you just can't go in there hoping to trap Max against the cage and throw a combination that lands and knocks him out. If you do want to do that with Max, you will get out volumed, and he won't be there. So Ilia Topuria does have to come in and kind of get the jab going early, um, make Max respect his power and his hands early. Max is gonna throw a Max won't do anything special that I feel like Ilia Topuria hadn't seen. He just has to keep up with the volume. And I think Ilia Topuria wants to come out and make a statement at UFC 308. I think Ilia Topuria is determined to be the first guy that knocks out Max Holloway ever. I think this man is just at a different level. I think the champ is at a different level with the skill set, his mindset, and just I think he's going to be a champ for a very, very long time. And for him to kind of go back to back of knocking out Volkanovski, and I do think he knocks out Max on Saturday. I think we see the champ just flourish into probably one of the biggest stars in the UFC. Now he has become, you know, disliked, or he's chosen to be this villain almost. I love it, man. I love it, and I'm a huge fan of this guy. My first fight that I remember of his is the Ryan Hall fight, and that's when he kind of caught my eye. I was like, "Oh shit!" Like this guy was legit, and he hasn't slowed up since. Again, this man's boxing is for real, but he has to hopefully come out more aggressive than he did against in this fight than he did with Volkanovski. I think Ilia Topuria wins this fight by knockout, keeps the belt, and he has that title of I'm the first guy to knock out Max Holloway ever in his career. Give me the champ. The champ makes a statement on Saturday, and that's that, man. I hope that Ilia Topuria does kind of stay in the division and kind of rattles off a few wins, a few title defenses at 145 before he goes up and challenges for the 155er belt and maybe becomes a double champ. I don't know. But that is the breakdown for UFC 308 going down this Saturday. So my final picks for UFC 308, I'll go through them. I'll go through them again. I have Carlos Leal, underdog number one, Bruno Silva, Fareed Basharat, Kadina Chukwu, Abus Magomedov, Orobai, Geoff Neal, Abo Aslan, Shara Bullet Magomedov. I'm taking Magomed and Goliath. Give me Lerone Murphy. Give me Robert Whitaker, underdog number two. And then in the main event, give me Ilia Topuria by knockout and still the champion. And I think it's going to be a great card. Hopefully, I've done enough to earn your sub with this breakdown. Again, if you're following on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. And if you're listening to this on Spotify, hit that follow button. Keep up with me when I drop new content. And thank you guys for supporting me. And I'll see you guys on the next breakdown.